السلام عليكم. أنا عثمان العي. أنا لوجو لبت.
Salam alaikum, ni hao, guten tag, jambo, aloha, konnichiwa, annyeonghaseyo, aloha, sawadee.
Hey fam, we need to talk about the elephant in the Twitter room / Reddit room. If you have not been on the internet in a while, first, congratulations, especially on Twitter. Things are not pretty right now. But there has been a thing going around Twitter that is a poll with this audio clip, and we'll play it right here.
Laurel.
Now, what do you hear in this clip? Some people say they hear Laurel. Some people say they hear Yanny. And this has been a really interesting sort of phenomenon for several different reasons. So I wanted to just take a minute to sort of speak off the cuff about what is going on here exactly. Now, there have already been a lot of really good sort of layman's terms videos to explain what's going on psychologically and auditory sensory input, and also with linguistic type stuff. So I'm just gonna kind of attempt to put all of that together and explain to you here what exactly is going on. But if you're interested for more, there are links, of course, down below. As far as what this is and where it came from, it was originally a Reddit post and then it was on Twitter. But the original Reddit post was this guy who posted it, and he found it from vocabulary.com. And it was one of the pronunciation readings of the word Laurel. But he was using it for some sort of project, so he kept repeating it. I have a suspicion he's a linguistics student, because typically when you're listening to things over and over and over again, it's because you're listening for something, which is a lot of times what we tend to do. And then his sister, I believe, came and was asking him, why are you listening to this over and over again? Why are you listening to this recording of Laurel over and over again? And then someone else, one of her friends or something, was like, that's not Laurel, it's Yanny. And so then they started talking about, well, no, it's definitely Laurel. And then why, and then asking other people what they hear. And now the interesting thing about it is that on Twitter, I think right now the poll it's very evenly split. It's like 40 something to 50 something at the recording time of this video. But so it's supposed to be the word Laurel, but it's really interesting to think about why so many people are hearing what seems to be a totally different word. So it pretty much comes down to three different things, and this is where different subjects come into play. So the first thing has to do with your perception and your priming, especially. The next thing has to do with auditory input, which deals with like frequency and hearing range, hearing quality, that kind of thing. But then there's also a component with speech production. So we're going to talk a little bit about all three of these. So when it comes to the priming, there's this sort of psychological idea that you can be primed to give a certain answer based on how people approach you with the question. So for example, maybe when you first heard this, someone said, do you hear Yanny in this? And then you've got the idea that, oh, this is maybe supposed to sound like the word Yanny. Or maybe someone comes up to you and says, does this sound like Laurel to you, or does it sound like something else? And so then you kind of know, oh, it's supposed to sound like Laurel. So that is one kind of possibility that if no one told you that it was supposed to be Laurel versus Yanny, I mean, maybe you heard, it could be anything. It's a lot like if you listen to another language and you have no idea what you're supposed to be listening for, your brain could kind of be filling in the blanks with what you think it sounds like based on your own language. You're just sort of using context and your personal experience to sort of fill in the blanks of what your brain can't figure out. Then the next idea with this has to do with frequency. So a lot of people have mentioned that this particular recording, especially the one that's on Twitter, seems to be a recording of a recording of a recording. And so there are some pretty major problems with the quality of the sound and with the frequency. So I'm going to put an image right here. This is called a formant, which is sort of a visual representation of an audio sound. And it shows you the frequency of what's going on here. And if you study formants, you can look at the patterns of what are in front of you to show you what sounds those are, but that's something for another day. What I want you to notice here, humans are only able to hear in a certain frequency. And a lot of people have mentioned that when it comes to Laurel and Yanny, you probably hear one or the other based on what frequencies you are picking up on. So people who have younger ears tend to pick up higher frequencies, and people who are older or have maybe some sort of hearing damage from listening to loud music a lot or something like that tend to hear lower frequencies more. And so Yanny, the sounds that are in Yanny tend to produce higher frequencies, and the sounds that are in Laurel tend to produce lower frequencies. What people have noticed about this particular formant is that even though most of the sound is happening in a lower frequency range, you can see there's still quite a bit of cloudiness up in the upper frequency. So it's almost like a layered sound. Well, people have mentioned that maybe, younger audiences or even females or people who have better hearing are more likely to hear Yanny, and people who are older or have hearing problems or whatever may be more likely to hear Laurel. But it's interesting how if a lot of people have done the thing where they slow down the recording or they speed up the recording, and then you're more likely to hear one or the other. So for example, when I hear this, I hear Laurel, but it sounds funny, and we'll get to that in a minute. But when you slow it down or you speed it up, I can really start to hear where Yanny might come in. And now I want to transition into the speech production aspect of this whole conundrum, because it kind of still has to do with frequency, but I think that there's more to it than that. So in a video by Wired, they are speaking with a neuroscientist who studies speech and language production. And he makes a good point that typically the sounds that are in, the phonemes that are in the words Yanny and Laurel, Yanny tends to produce higher frequency sounds. We would call them high sounds because they tend to have higher frequencies. But especially you can hear like the E on the end, like people tend to think of that as a high sound. But also the ah sound or A sound, depending on if you think it's Yanny or Yanny, those are higher sounds. And then you compare that with Laurel, all these old sounds and r and lo, like it's a lower frequency thing. But the point that I think is being kind of missed that he touched on, and I've seen a couple other articles mention it, is that the phonemes themselves are actually really similar. So especially if you think about the sounds that are in each of these words. In Yanny, you have y, e, n, e. And then in Laurel, you have l, a, l, Laurel, that's another one. So these sounds, especially y, l, and r, are called liquid sounds. And it's not just because like we kind of use a lot of liquid when we're making those sounds in our mouth, especially in English, but they tend to move. They're very malleable in the mouth. And so, and then you just kind of fill in the blanks with the vowels. And you can even, if you focus on the movements of your mouth when you're saying Laurel and Yanny, it's actually pretty similar. And like if I say Laurel, Yanny, Laurel, Yanny, Laurel, Yanny, the biggest difference is the L and the Y at the beginning. But these sounds are actually not that different as far as hearing goes. And anytime that you speak with someone who speaks another language, you will hear how they have difficulties producing some sounds in your language. And it may be because they are similar enough, especially in their own language, that they have trouble producing that. And so sometimes it feels the same to them, but it sounds different. And the same thing can be the opposite, where something sounds the same, but it feels different. So I think especially with the way that this particular person on vocabulary.com pronounced Laurel, like, you can, especially if you kind of substitute, if you say the l, r, and l, but you add in the vowel sounds that are in Yanny, you can feel in your mouth how they can be very similar. So like if I say Larry, and then if I say Yonnel, there you go, Yonnel. And so now you can feel like how that sort of up and down movement of your tongue, and how it's sort of both in the front and in your back of your mouth at the same time. There's a lot of really similar movements going on. And so I think that it's actually pretty easy to make them sound similar. And then when you get sort of an ambiguous pronunciation, and then it's sort of modified through recording over and over again, it makes total sense to me that people would have trouble differentiating these words. So if you hear Yanny or if you hear Yanny and not Laurel, it's not that you're wrong or something. Like any sense is subjective. A lot of people have even compared this auditory illusion as an optical illusion that we had a couple years ago with the blue and black versus white and gold dress. It's very similar to that, but just with a different sense. And then, you even think there are tactile illusions too, where you can, trick your fingers into feeling something that's not there. There's all these different tricks that you can play on different senses. And there are of course other auditory illusions that are similar to this, but I think that this particular one is one that's going to be remembered because it is such a half and half sort of response to it. And it's been so polarizing. So, I would encourage us, instead of debating as to who's right and who's wrong, to just enjoy the fact that sound is awesome and that we can have this ability to be able to, hear these differences and be able to perceive differences in the same sound. I just think that that's really cool. So anyway, I know that, I kind of spoke through this quickly and I'm kind of talking off the top of my head. So I didn't write this down. I don't have particular citations and things, but I have put some links down below to some of the videos and articles and things that I've watched and read that do a really good job of summarizing this, both in sort of layman's terms and in more technical linguistic jargon. So if you're interested in checking that out, I really encourage you to do so and just have fun with it. So anyway, I think that that's it. I just thought that, everybody else seems to be kind of putting in their 2 cents. I wanted to put mine in too. Why not? I know that it's been a while since I've been on here, since I've made a video, and that's just because life. I have no real excuse, but I'm also not super apologetic. But there is, I'm working on getting a language highlight video together about Arabic. So for those of you who are going through Ramadan right now, Ramadan Mubarak, and for the rest of us, we will be learning about Arabic sometime soon. So, all right, thanks again. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.